Welcome to Marshland Histories, the series of oral history podcasts celebrating the people, the places and the marshes in the Lower Waveney Valley. In this episode, I'll be chatting to historian Ivan Bunn, my old mate from the High Street Histories Picture podcast series, and I'll be talking to Ivan about his own Carlton roots and memories and his research into the history of the marshland.
I was born in 1947, so I remember my grandfather Bunn, who lived in one of the cottages on Conrad Road. Weekends, we'd often go down onto Carlton marshes after duck's eggs. Not very PC these days, but if we found any, Grandad would take home and cook for our tea. But everything was green and wet and overgrown and boggy, and it was a little bit overwhelming. There was a lot of it. I was just impressed by this incredible wilderness. Having researched the history many years later and produced a report for the Suffolk Wildlife Trust on the history of those marshes, when they were the share marshes, they were in actual fact, judging by the maps anyway, they were all used as grazing marshes and whatever. And I think they were probably, when they were in their heyday in the 19th century and earlier, they would have been quite well managed. They were at one time, that was all common land and it was enclosed. And so depending on what properties you owned in the parish of Carlton Colville, you were entitled to so many shares of the enclosed common land. So, like always happened, the more you had, the more you got. So there's my grandfather, his three brothers, and I think one of his sisters as well. And the three brothers, they were all older than my granddad. They all joined the regular army and they served in the First World War. And when the war broke out, my granddad volunteered. Then he was quite badly gassed, lost a lung and what have you, and he couldn't do a lot of manual work. Yeah. But I think the biggest problem is my grandfather was a footballer for Alton Broad Football Club, and he got medals and things that he always wore on his watch chain. But he went to war, a very athletic man in his early 20s, and came back basically disabled. And he didn't say a lot. If I asked him questions, he'd say, "What do you want to know that for, boy?" But opposite the cottages that are still there on Conrad Road was a market garden owned by the same family who owned the cottages that he lived in. Okay. And so he looked after the market garden. I think it was 1904 when the northern half of the parish of Carlton Colville and the southern half of the parish of Alton became an urban district called Alton Broad. But my grandfather, he would never ever accept that he lived in Alton Broad. He lived in Carlton Colville, boy. To me, as a kid, I had no idea there was a village called Carlton Colville. No. Carlton Colville with all these fields and marshes and what have you. It's not until many years later that I became interested in the parish. And I think that might have all been triggered out by the first time I read about the Mardle.
Okay, right. Need to go and find this exotic place.
Yeah. The Mardle, I'm sure you know where the word comes from.
Gossiping, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, apparently the water around the Mardle was used to ret hemp. So you get the hemp and you soak it in the water and you keep agitating it and all the soft covering comes and leaves the fibres that you can then weave to make cord or rope or what have you. And apparently it was a long job. So the people who used to do it, particularly it was women's work, would often sit there for ages having a good old Mardle while they retted the hemp. Whether that actually applies to the Mardle at Carlton Colville, I don't know, but I like to think I can see medieval women around the water-filled ditch, Mardle and Retton ahead.
Well, now you say it, Ivan, I think I can see them too. And that thing you said about the marshes and this wilderness on our doorstep really set me thinking. And having only really recently discovered the marshes myself, I was inspired to write a poem that explores this whole new map of place names. The second part is read here by David Redgrave and Sally Ann Burnett.
The wilderness.
Or how to get there.
You've been fishing at Spratt's Water for carp, tench or bream.
Or walked around the marshes you know well, but might not by name.
Just seen the green from a passing train.
There's Tower Fen,
And Guzzle's Gate,
Button's Marshes.
Octagon Scrape.
Sounds like there should be treasure at Jensen's Island.
But on this map, no X marks the spot. To find it, you have to cross Long's Marsh and Slutton's Dyke and navigate what sounds scary, mean high water.
But there was peril at Dawdy's Crossing. Did you open the box to pick up the phone and ask the keeper in the gatehouse cottage if it was safe to cross?
Did you have to wait? Or do you remember living in Barnaby as a boy and the smoke of a steam train you could only hear but never saw puffing away?